Welcome in everyone to your weekly weather briefing presented for you by the National Weather Service Atlanta Peachtree City office. This briefing is for the week starting December 7th, 2023. My name is Brett Albright, meteorologist with the National Weather Service in Peachtree City, and I will be presenting the briefing for you today. We'll hop in right off the bat to our risk levels for the upcoming week, as well as some of the weather highlights that we'll be focused in on. You'll note right away that we have a risk level 2 here for Saturday and Sunday, and that is focusing in on our next storm system that's going to bring rain showers and thunderstorms to the region, specifically as we get into later in the day, Saturday night, and then into Sunday. We also have near critical fire weather conditions for a couple of counties across North Georgia today. Outside of that, we aren't looking at a whole lot of impactful weather as we get into Friday and then the first part of next week. Noted a second ago that fire danger conditions across portions of North Georgia, and we do have a fire danger statement out for 4 counties up there: Fannin, Union, White, and Towns through 5 p.m. this evening. Areas up there are seeing very low humidities, and that may combine with the dry fuels to produce conditions that would be favorable for fire ignitions. So we want to make sure that we're avoiding activities that could lead to fire starts up there today. Looking ahead at the week in terms of temperatures and precipitation, temperatures being plotted here across the top and precipitation down here at the bottom. As you see, as we go into the weekend, our temperatures do rise ahead of the approaching storm system and some good warm air advection out in front of it, pushing temperatures up to at least a regional average of around 67 degrees for highs on Saturday afternoon. A front moves through the region as we get into Sunday, and that will bring in a cooler air mass for the first part of next week, where we may see lows dipping down into the 20s and 30s across a good portion of the state Monday morning through Wednesday morning. Precipitation chances have a nice little peak down here as we get into the weekend, and you'll note that our overall regional average peaks at around 84%, which is quite high when you look at that being an average for the entire region during the overnight hours on Saturday and early Sunday morning. Outside of that, very little precipitation is expected in the region through most of next week. Here's kind of a breakdown of the regional or even national pattern that we're looking at here across the CONUS as we go into Saturday and Sunday. You can see that strong storm system moving through along with the cold front and warm front here on Saturday. That will bring a chance of thunderstorms to our west, and may see a few showers creeping in as we go through the day on Saturday. As that cold front approaches on Sunday, rain chances peak as we noted before, especially along and just ahead of that cold front. And that'll be the time when we'll see most of our precipitation during the overnight hours Saturday night into Sunday morning. Speaking of precipitation, here's a look at our city-by-city breakdown of precipitation chances, as well as the amounts that we expect. We'll start over here on the left with the precipitation chances, and as noted before, you'll see those chances rising, especially across western areas as we go into the day on Saturday. Those creep up even higher, peaking around 95% for a number of places during the overnight hours, so between about 12 a.m. and 6 a.m. on Sunday. Once the front moves through, we fall off fairly quickly, rain chances dipping down quite low by the evening, and then as we get to midnight Sunday night, we've fallen off below 20% for pretty much everyone in the region. So it looks like the core of stuff over the weekend will come through either during the overnight hours while you're sleeping or probably early Sunday morning for most of us. In terms of amounts that we're expecting, we've got our official precipitation forecast over here on the right. You can see those peak amounts favored in these sort of orographic regions with the mountains up to the north, where we may see up to 2 to 3 inches in a few places. The rest of the area, the forecast generally favors somewhere between about 1 inch and 1.5 inches of precipitation. Now, anytime we have precipitation chances, like we showed on the last graph, we're showing you the mean or the most likely precipitation that we get out of that. There are other potentials out there, and so we're going to take a look this week at what would be the 90% chance of this much rain and the 10% chance of this much rain. Now, if we start over here on the left with a 90% chance of seeing this much rainfall, in other words, 9 out of 10 times we would expect you to see this much rainfall with this type of event. So if we look at the state here, this is generally those around a ½ inch creeping up to maybe closer to 3/4 of an inch across central Georgia, and then just over an inch here in northern parts of the state. So this is a good indicator of how much rain you can certainly expect to see with this event. Now this would be our worst case scenario over here on the right when we start talking about a 10% chance of this much rain. And you see that one's running pretty hot with totals generally over 3 inches for a large part of the area. Now that doesn't mean that the entire area would see those totals if we got the worst case scenario. This is more highlighting on local stuff. So think of your city. So if you were, say, here in Marietta, you've got a 3.02 as our worst case number. It's awfully specific, but you can see that's just right around 3 inches. Now, if you may get that much rainfall, but you could very easily come down here further to the south and not see that 3.2 in the Grange. So this is just a city-specific worst case. But overall, if we do get some training of thunderstorms or precipitation being heavy over a region for several hours in a row, this would be your high-end potential for the event over the weekend. Now, we noted right off the start that there were some thunderstorm chances this weekend. The good thing overall is that this is looking like a fairly low-end event for our region. That said, here is your SPC outlook. This is for Saturday. We don't yet have the outlook out for Sunday. That'll come out here later today. We do note that there is a slight and a marginal risk here just off to our west. Now, this convection is what's going to be moving at us as we go into Saturday night and the first part of the day on Sunday. Fortunately, it'll be moving into an atmosphere that looks to be more stable as it moves in, as this stuff moves into Georgia, and that should hopefully limit storm potential. That said, we can't entirely rule out an isolated strong or severe storm in the region, and we'll just have to monitor this as we go ahead, as if the atmosphere does come in a little bit more unstable than currently forecast. That could pose an issue for us, and maybe could lead to a severe storm or two during the overnight hours Saturday or early Sunday morning. Now, with that being the overall forecast, we can see over here that for our region, the risks of tornado, hail, and flooding this weekend are all in the low category. They're not zero, but they're quite small. So no significant risk right now of severe weather, but we continue to monitor. And we'll switch gears here just a bit and start talking a bit about the drought. Here's the current drought outlook that came out today. We can see there's still a fairly wide swath of D3 across North Georgia. Not a huge change from last week there. We were hoping that last week's rainfall would bring some drought relief to the region, and we're not going to get it with one storm, but and we did. We saw some slight improvement, but overall, with precip totals last weekend coming in lower than expected, we did not see as much as we would have hoped. With that being the case, river levels and lake levels remain lower than average, with some lakes being 5 to 10 feet below normal across North Georgia. Now, for a case like this where we have such a widespread D3, we would generally expect drought recovery to take 3 months or so of above normal precipitation. And that would be best case scenario, as that kind of gradual above normal would hopefully prevent the drought from ending in a flooding. If the drought were to end quicker, we would likely have a flooding situation. So that would be sort of your ideal and most likely scenario for ending the drought. Expected rainfall this week that we talked about just a second ago will have some impact on the drought, hopefully towards the improving end of the scale, but it will certainly not end drought conditions across northern or portions of central Georgia. All right, we'll take a quick look here at the week-over-week changes in the drought. If we look at the two categories that saw the most change here, it would be your abnormally dry and your D1 categories. So if we look at last week's drought outlook from November 28th, we see 21% were in D1. That has been reduced to 13% this week, with most of that falling off into your abnormally dry period. So last week's rainfall did provide some benefits in terms of reducing drought conditions, but overall it has not changed it much. You look at what's not in drought, 35% this week, 38% this week. We actually saw some counties move into that abnormally dry here. That increased us by 3% in the overall group that's in there. So kind of a mixed message there. The overall stories would kind of continue with roughly the status quo going forward. Where we're looking for the seasonal outlook, I think we've seen this before probably in prior weekly presentations, but we are generally expecting El Nino conditions to continue through the winter, and so our 3-month drought outlook does show improving conditions across most of the state. So either drought removal here in green, or just improving here across northwest Georgia, where those conditions are just a little bit more intense. So the outlook going forward is positive. It's just going to take us some time to claw our way back out of the hole that we're in terms of precipitation. Finally, we'll conclude here with the 8 to 14 day temperature outlook. So a brief look at next week. You can see here that overall, we've got a dome of warmer air that's going to persist across the plains. We get trapped here in Georgia, sort of between in that near normal zone. And then in terms of precipitation, we'll be seeing right on the edge of the slightly above to slightly below these first two categories. So overall, probably somewhere near normal precipitation here across the state of Georgia. We don't see any strong indicators that would say next week we'll have any big storm systems that'll bring a lot of rain. With that, that's all I have for today. As always, you can reach out to us by phone, on social media, or via email, or check us out online at weather.gov/Atlanta anytime for your most up-to-date forecast. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next week.